Crowds massed outside Gaza's Rafah border crossing today after the border opened for the first time since the war broke out on October 7th. An agreement was brokered to allow the movement of foreign passport holders as well as some critically injured people into Egypt. Now, there is no timeline for how long the Rafah crossing will remain open for evacuation. The agreement is also not linked to other issues under negotiations, such as the release of the hostages being held by the Hamas group. The Israeli army has released footage of airstrikes targeting the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. Now, Israel's military spokesperson has confirmed that the airstrikes had targeted a central Hamas stronghold. In a televised interview, he said that the strike targeted a very senior Hamas official, adding that more data will be released about the operation soon. Officials at Gaza's Indonesian hospital said that over 50 Palestinians have been killed in the same airstrike and about 150 wounded by the aerial explosives that struck residential buildings in the Jabalia camp. Yemen's Houthi rebel group has officially launched a full-blown attack on Israel, signaling a war on another front. The Yemeni group said that it launched ballistic missiles and drones towards Israel for its escalating attacks on Gaza. In a televised statement, the Houthi group's military spokesperson has said it was their third operation targeting of Israel. The Houthis see themselves as part of the resistance that includes Iranian-backed Shia Muslim factions in Iraq and Lebanon's Hezbollah group. The Yemeni rebels are the third group to launch attacks on Israel after Hamas attacked Israel since October 7th. Now, families of the people abducted by the Hamas militants on October 7th have urged the French government to help in securing the release of their loved ones. The relatives were in Paris as part of a trip organized by the Israeli Bar Association. To draw attention to the plight of the Israeli hostages, they criticized the Israeli government for what they called not prioritizing the release of hostages. "66 trucks of humanitarian assistance entered Gaza in the last 24 hours. The U.S. White House has said that more trucks are expected to be cleared for deliveries. Now, National Security spokesperson further said that U.S. President Joe Biden will hold discussions with Jordan's King Abdullah on the aid situation. He also admitted that the quantum of aid delivered is just a fraction of what is needed in Gaza. However, the spokesperson had no comments on a large blast at a Gaza refugee camp, saying that he had no information on it. He said that killing civilians is not a war aim of Israel and that Israel is trying to, in fact, minimize such casualties. Top U.S. diplomat Antony Blinken will begin a new trip of West Asia on Friday as he is set to visit Israel for meetings with members of the government there. The State Department has said that Blinken will make other stops in the region as well. Now, earlier this month, Blinken visited Israel, Jordan, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Egypt as part of a solidarity mission by Washington and also to prevent a spillover of the Israel-Gaza conflict. Now, the United States is Israel's biggest supporter, of course, providing it with substantial military aid Now, on Tuesday, Blinken was at the U.S. Capitol to defend the funding request, but the Senate hearing was repeatedly interrupted by pro-Palestinian protesters. In a new development in the Israel-Gaza conflict, the spokesperson of the Hamas's armed wing has said that the group will release a number of foreign hostages in the coming days. The spokesperson did not reveal the names or their nationalities, and so far 5 hostages have been set free. 4 after back-channel negotiations with Hamas and 1 after an Israeli army operation. Now, Hamas is seeking the release of Palestinian prisoners in exchange for the hostages. Hundreds of protesters demonstrated in solidarity with Palestinians stuck in Gaza. Protesters waved the Palestinian flag and chanted slogans showing their support. One demonstrator even gathered in front of the U.S. consulate in Rio de Janeiro and accused the U.S. of financing the war. Around 2,000 people held a protest in Jordan against the deadly Israeli airstrike on a Palestinian refugee camp that killed at least 50 Palestinians. Now, demonstrators gathered at a mosque in the capital of Amman near the Israeli embassy, comparing the incident to a massacre. Chilean and Colombian governments have recalled their ambassadors to Israel. This comes as both the countries accuse Israel for violating international humanitarian law in the Gaza Strip. Now, Chile called for a ceasefire and the passage of humanitarian aid into the zone, and also said that Israel was violating international law. The Colombian president has called the attacks a massacre of the Palestinian people. Israel's foreign ministry has not responded on the decision of the countries. Other Latin American neighbors such as Mexico and Brazil have also recently called for a ceasefire. Now, Pentagon has said that the United States is sending an additional 3,000 troops to West Asia, with a focus on providing support in areas like explosive ordnance disposal and communications. Further, Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Patrick Ryder said that the troops would not be stationed in Israel. Ryder also said that they are intended to support regional deterrence efforts and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities. He added that this month there have been 27 attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria. Egypt's Prime Minister has said that Cairo is trying to engage at all levels to resolve the unprecedented humanitarian crisis in Gaza. He also said that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and all state agencies are working to help the residents of the Gaza Strip. He also emphasized that the only viable way of forging peace in the region was the two-state solution. The flow of aid to Gaza from Egypt has been slowed by an inspection system agreed with Israel, in which trucks drive from Egypt's Rafah crossing along the Egypt-Israel border before returning towards Gaza. The UN has said that the new system is way too cumbersome. On the other hand, Israel's security advisor has said that Egyptian hospitals should serve as an alternative for treating casualties from Gaza. Now, Pakistan's November 1st deadline for the expulsion of undocumented migrants has ended. The country is witnessing a surge in the return of Afghans, with thousands making their way across the border to the Taliban-ruled nation. The move has sparked mass exodus, tearing families apart and raising concerns about human rights violations as the deadline ended. Now, more than 10,000 Afghans rushed to the border just on Tuesday. Large numbers of migrants crammed into trucks and buses headed to the Torkham and Shaman border crossing to return home. And according to Pakistani officials, the border crossing in Shaman will remain open till 4 p.m. local time. This will be to allow those who have arrived there to leave the country voluntarily. Now, video has emerged of an inferno on a key train link in Russian-occupied Donetsk after heavy shelling by Ukraine. Kiev's forces have launched pinpoint strikes on fuel tankers in the eastern industrial city captured by Russian forces a year ago. Now, according to local media, one person has been killed because of the shelling, while several others have been left injured. UN Security Council members have been briefed on the situation in Ukraine by the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Now, the Human Rights Office said that it has formally verified the death of 9,900 civilians in Ukraine after strikes on homes, schools, fields and markets. It also added that the actual number is way higher. UN has said that humanitarian organizations are helping people to carry out thousands of households repairs and ensuring water and heating systems are functional ahead of freezing temperatures. Now, the Russian military had been accused of categorically targeting Ukraine's power and other critical infrastructure with missiles and drones during the last winter season. The US Supreme Court waded into the issue of free speech rights in the digital age during arguments in cases from California and Michigan. Now, the issue involves whether public officials may legally block others on social media, a function often used on these platforms to stifle critics. Lower courts reached different conclusions in two cases, and the Supreme Court previously confronted the issue in 2021 in litigation over Trump's effort to block critics on Twitter. However, the justices failed to decide the matter by deeming the case unconstitutional after he left office. An 86-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of taking two women hostage at a post office near Tokyo on Tuesday. According to media reports, police stormed the building after one of the hostages was released and the other fled the scene. Police were looking into whether the incident was linked to a shooting that left two people wounded at a hospital in the neighboring city of Toda earlier that day. Now, New Delhi residents struggled to breathe as air quality remained very poor. People complained of irritation in eyes and breathing troubles despite wearing masks. The air quality has dropped to very poor, with PM10 levels at 320 and PM2.5 levels at 167. Anything above 60 is considered unhealthy. A thick haze has taken over Beijing as well as large parts of northern China fights its worst air pollution this year. Tens of millions of people in Beijing and its surrounding areas are confronting serious pollution issues in the first half of November. Now, authorities issued their highest red alert in several areas in densely populated Hebei province that surrounds the capital. Mexicans have started to receive food and basic supplies as they try to recover from the devastation of Hurricane Otis. More than 100 people are dead or missing. According to storm experts, the cost of damage can be as high as $15 billion. Now, Mexico has sent thousands of armed forces members to keep order and help distribute tons of food supplies. Mexico's government has said that it would unveil a rescue plan for the hurricane-stricken beach resort. A Southern California wildfire fueled by desert winds has burnt up 2,200 acres of land and prompted evacuation orders for 4,000 people in Riverside County. Now, the highland fire nearly doubled in size overnight, pushed to the west by Santa Ana winds, a seasonal phenomenon when dry desert air blows towards the ocean, creating a fire hazard in Southern California. Now, California fire crews attacked the blaze with teams on the ground and aircraft dropping fire retardants. The euphoria in chipmaker stocks has been uneven, while Nvidia's stock has rewarded its investors with multi-bagger returns. Shares of competitors AMD have struggled until now. But now, AMD has forecasted $2 billion in sales in 2024 from a chip that aims to compete with Nvidia in the artificial intelligence market. Now, AMD forecast fourth quarter revenue and gross margin below Wall Street estimates, hurt by a weak gaming market as well as a decline in demand from some industries for its programmable chips. Most Asian currencies retreated in early trade today, while the dollar sat on strong gains as markets hunkered down before the conclusion of a Federal Reserve meeting later in the day. Now, the Indian rupee rose marginally, taking some relief from a recent slide in oil prices. The dollar index and dollar index futures rose slightly in Asian trade after a strong overnight rally against a weaker yen. China's weaker-than-expected pandemic recovery has seen its stock markets fall. Funds run up losses and foreign investors run for the exit. But areas of the market dominated by small stocks and frequented by the country's retail investors have done surprisingly well. A Reuters report suggests that scores of retail investors are dabbling in micro-cap stocks that are relatively immune to massive market-moving funds.